$1 million, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million. How much do you actually need to wake up with tomorrow to feel free and flexible and do whatever you want for the rest of your life? Forever. Here's some food for thought. The difference between $3 million and $300 million isn't just a few more homes or faster planes. It actually can be a completely different lifestyle with a whole new set of freedoms and flexibilities. And believe it or not, at one of these levels, it's actually been observed that more money tends to make folks less happy. Today, I'm going to break down 5 levels of wealth that I've seen through the course of my career and how they translate into retirement. And this is not the Instagram version with flashy photos and videos. These are real numbers, real lifestyles, some of the things that could still trip you up, and some of the psychological impacts that having these different levels of money could have on one. But here's the thing. So many people that we come across are climbing the ladder through these different rungs of wealth, but they don't really know where it goes. They might hit $1 million and think, okay, just a little more to go. Next thing you know, they hit $5 million and they think that they still have to continue climbing. Now, I've studied hundreds of retirees at various levels of wealth, and there are actually patterns that emerge. And at one certain level is where things do seem to change for most. And whether you're at $50,000 saved or $50 million, the goal remains the same. It's not necessarily about chasing wealth, but more so about chasing that freedom and flexibility. Let's start at the bottom of the ladder, where a family has between $1 to $3 million in investable assets. Using the classic 4% withdrawal rule, you should have the ability to take out between $40,000 to $120,000 at this level of wealth, and in theory, not outlive your assets. Well, very typically, the mortgage might be paid off, and that anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck is probably alleviated as well. You might wake up one day, and that crushing weight that you might have had throughout the course of your career in trying to save this amount of assets could simply be gone. You might choose to relocate to an area that might have a lower cost of living, or decide to stay where you are. That flexibility is totally up to you. On average, you probably take one very nice vacation per year. You say no to jobs that you would deem tough or a waste of time, and you might sleep better through the night. And although all of that might sound great, there is a side that not many folks will talk about, and that is the fact of the matter that you might still remain cautious and frugal in your day-to-day decision making. Whether it might be a major medical emergency that could put you in a precarious position, or a family member that needs help, which causes you to think twice, you have to make more careful decisions over the course of time because you don't want those assets that you worked so hard to save to diminish before your eyes. But that feeling of having to be cautious might actually diminish at the next level of wealth, and that is where retirement could actually feel completely different. Folks in the $5 million to $12 million range, where they're withdrawing between $200,000 to $500,000 a year, are living at a bit of a different level. Here is where I've seen a fundamental shift take place in many instances, where money is not necessarily at the core of the decision-making process for these folks. And although you might not be flying private yet, business class is probably your default. You may choose to spend winters somewhere warm and summers somewhere cool. Spontaneous long weekends with friends? Sure, why not? The dinner check comes and you take care of everyone. The real freedom and flexibility that I see at this level of wealth tends to be that location is not a factor. You could do things that you want and you don't have to think twice. Your child wants to start a business, you can help. Your friend wants to take a trip out to New Zealand for the weekend, and you say absolutely. And this is actually where you might reflect and think, oh, this is what I've been chasing all along. Because you're not necessarily thinking about money anymore. You're thinking more about your time, the people you're with, and the experiences that you share. At this level, there are also a different set of reality checks to be aware of. Not necessarily a bad thing, just things to keep at top of mind. One of the biggest things that stands out is that you still have to do stuff, whether that be cooking, taking care of your laundry, waiting in line, or sitting in traffic. But this next level is an area where you never have to do anything that you don't want ever again. Between the levels of wealth of 15 million and 40 million, where you're withdrawing about $600,000 to $1.6 million a year in income, is where I see things change. Welcome to the private lifestyle, where you might add a third home, have part-time or live-in help, and access to top-notch healthcare anywhere in the world. Your children's education, or even your grandchildren's education, covered with at the blink of an eye. But what I see to be the real game changer is you have the ability to say no. You don't have to cook for yourself. You don't have to clean for yourself. You don't have to waste time in the minutia of life. And here's the quiet superpower that many don't talk about. You can help a friend or a family member if they're in need. You can come to the rescue if someone needs a bailout. And you don't even have to think twice. Whether your sibling can't pay their mortgage or your best friend's child needs an emergency surgery that they can't afford, you can essentially become a safety net for everyone that you love. This, in my opinion, is where retirement stops meaning not working, and more so means I'm only going to spend time on the things that I value. But you still have to plan, and you do still have to think. And this next level of wealth is where things can change even further, where problems might disappear before you even notice them. This next level of wealth is between $80 to $320 million in investable assets, where you're pulling in between $3 to $10 million a year, sometimes more. And this isn't just considered wealth anymore. This is more so infrastructure. A full-time staff, executive assistants, and on-call doctors. Either you're chartering private planes or you might own a few. And that third house turns into 5. Your travel is door to door, your privacy is total, and you never have to wait for anything ever again. Someone on your team is always 3 steps ahead, working to put out fires that you don't even know exist. Time becomes your only real currency because everything else is handled for you. Want to be in Aspen tomorrow? You're there. Want the entire family to gather in Tuscany for a week? It's taken care of. Want to never think about logistics, maintenance, or organizing things ever again? Done. But keep in mind, managing this machine can take up time. You're not managing your life anymore. You're managing those who are managing your life. From staff dynamics to asset allocation, security concerns, and family office operations. And here's the really wild part. Let's take this a step further because this next level barely feels like retirement at all. At $1 billion or more, where you're taking in upwards of $30 to $100 million a year, is where things are very, very different. This could account for even more when you're taking into account foundations and investments. And this is a level of wealth which I would refer to as institutional. Your family office probably has dozens of employees. You yourself have government level security, and you can buy or build almost anything, whether it be a university, a hospital, a sports team, or an entire community. Some would actually argue that you have the ability to shape society at this point. With all of that, there is a caveat that outsiders might not understand, and this is that you could end up being more busy than ever. The machine needs constant tending to. There are always people around you asking questions, and anonymity is near impossible. At this level, legacy and influence more than likely take the place of freedom and flexibility. You're not necessarily waking up asking, what do I want to do today? More than likely, you're probably waking up thinking, what does my foundation need? What do my investments need? What do all the people around me that count on me need? You could, in theory, potentially have the ability to change the world at this level of wealth. However, you might have lost the ability to be able to disappear in it. Here's what the research shows, and what many retirees eventually start to think, feel, and even admit. Freedom and flexibility scale exponentially until you hit about $30 to $50 million. After that, those extra zeros mostly end up buying complexity and attention rather than joy. And the part of this that motivates me more than anything to make an impact in my profession is those folks that come into a sudden liquidity event, whether it be from selling a business or winning the lotto or inheriting wealth. Because many times they end up finding that the feelings that they once had of wanting and yearning for that wealth can turn into loneliness, confusion, and even anxiety. So what I try to harp on when having discussions with these folks in these scenarios, beyond wealth and all the planning that goes into the situation, is trying to build and strengthen relationships with friends and family and those they love. In addition, trying to prioritize an active lifestyle with a focus on health. I feel incredibly strongly that having a reason to get out of bed every day with excitement that has nothing to do with money can be a real game changer. Because that trap that I mentioned earlier, one that I see at every level, is the fact that chasing the next level of wealth won't necessarily bring you happiness. And I would actually argue that if you're not happy at level 1, that there's a strong chance that you're probably not going to be happy at level 5 either. So I challenge you with this question. What's the smallest amount that you would need to wake up excited every day and say no to the things that you don't want to spend time on? And this is not a number, as far as dollars, that would sound impressive to others, but the number that you actually need. And it's important to keep in mind that not only is everyone's dollar amount different, it's also deeply personal. For some people, it could be $3 million, a boat, and the ability to fish all day long. And for others, it might never seem like enough. But for many, chasing an arbitrary number can be completely meaningless and bring no value to life. Take a minute to consider what freedom and flexibility actually means to you and try to reverse engineer the situation from there. Not around a net worth screenshot that allows you to brag to friends. Not about what you think looks good on paper, but what actually allows you to live the life that you desire. Because here's what I've learned after studying hundreds and hundreds of retirees. The ones that are the happiest aren't always the ones that are the most wealthy. They're the ones that know what enough looks like for them. They stopped running the rat race, they stopped chasing an arbitrary number, and they stopped competing with what they saw on social media to focus on what's important in their lives. And if you're going through this process right now, and you're trying to figure out what legacy means to you, check out our next video here.